if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them.
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
The Patrick Riggins Show. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
All right, opening the show today with one of the latest songs to be released by the band Beware of Darkness. We played it a couple of other times as segment openers, but I think this is the first time for a show opener. That song entitled How. You're listening to one of the fastest growing shows on the radio dial, The Patrick Riggins Show. Here you get a viewpoint not often heard from these days, that of the original American values of freedom and liberty. This is the premier show of the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and is heard locally here in Knoxville, Tennessee on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. And speaking of howling, we've heard a lot of it this week from the ruling establishment in Washington, haven't we? I mean, really, how dare we, the citizens of this country, speak up against our rulers in the government? Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid even stated that the people wanting to stop Obamacare are anarchists. Anarchists! How dare we oppose anything the government is wanting to do? You know, this isn't Democrats against Republicans anymore. This is the government against the people of this nation. We have Republicans who say this is bad legislation. Democrats too. Liberals have even come out against it. And polls consistently show the country doesn't want this. Oh, but we're, supposed to just sit out here and shut our mouths. Take whatever Congress passes and learn to live with it. If someone speaks up, if someone demands that Congress follow the Constitution, well, hey, they're the bad guy now. They're the person who is being an extremist. If you look at the Constitution, these government people are the extremists. If you're proposing something that isn't in the Constitution, then isn't that the definition of being an extremist? You're trying to violate the rules that we've all agreed to govern our country under. This country wasn't founded on taking money from one individual and giving it to another in the form of charity. That isn't the American way. That isn't being an American. Those aren't our true, original American values. But listen to the president who describes our country as compassionate. That's why we have to pass Obamacare. This is indicative of how wrong these types of people are. From the president on down, through both major political parties, all the way down to the individual who's arguing for this piece of unconstitutional BS. Our country's people are compassionate. The citizens of this country give more to charity than any other country in the world. You see, our government was not set up to be compassionate. It was set up to be fair and to treat everyone equally. Sure, we had some bumps with the slavery issue, but we got those ironed out. Just read the Declaration of Independence, and you can get a sense of how our founders felt. All men are created equal with certain inalienable rights. So yes, our people are compassionate, but our government is just supposed to be fair and equal. If we, as a country, were supposed to take money from one citizen to pay the bills of another, then we would have written it into our Constitution. We'd have put in there that a certain percentage of every American's wages will be taken and put into a big pot to be distributed in a way as seen fit by the government of the United States. If that was what our country was founded on, then it would be written out plain as day. But it isn't. That's because no one would have voted to ratify the Constitution had that been included in it. When you hear someone saying, our country has always cared for the poor, Now you can correct them. No, our country's people have always cared for the poor. Our government isn't supposed to be doing that. If it were, it would be in the Constitution, would it not? And it isn't just one party or the other doing this, it's both of them. Just look at how Senator Ted Cruz was attacked, not only by the Democrats, but by the Republicans as well. His own party attacking him for opposing legislation that's bad for this country. The reason we have Obamacare to begin with is because we let it happen. The American people let it happen. Everyone who is sitting around not calling their congressional representatives, not attending their town hall meetings, not pestering them to vote down ridiculous, unconstitutional legislation like this, for everyone not doing any of those things, this is your fault. But hey, don't feel bad. You also share the blame with everyone who didn't vote in the last election. This is why I was telling you before the last presidential election that you need to be sure and vote. I was on a talk show last summer before the election and was asked about that. What did I have to say to people who didn't want to vote for Obama, but didn't want to vote for Romney either? And I told them, vote for whoever you want, even if it's a third-party candidate. But by all means, you must go vote. You could have voted for any number of alternate candidates instead of not voting at all. You know, I've preached over and over, and I still do. Politicians look at voting returns. If you aren't voting, then you aren't going to be worried about, or they're not going to be worried about doing whatever they want. They know there isn't anyone going to hold them accountable because the turnout is so low. Look at it this way. Who's putting these people into office? Who's voting your congressional representatives into office? Well, if your voter turnout is low, and across this nation it is, if the voter turnout is low, then it's their own people putting these candidates into office. The people supporting that particular candidate are going to vote for them. You know, that's a given. So who's not voting for this particular candidate? Well, it's the supporters of the people who are voting for the other candidate. So who do we have left? Well, it's the majority of the eligible voters. How do I know that? Because just about every election day, under 50% of the eligible people vote. Oh, the presidential election, they'll put that number into the 60% range or so, but that still leaves 40% or more not voting. So when a winning politician and their consultants sit down and look at the election returns, they understand, hey, all I have to do is please these people voting for me, and I'll easily win again. They don't have to listen to your griping because the odds are you aren't going to vote for them anyway. And who cares? They don't need your vote. They look at the returns and say, I have the numbers to beat the challengers, so I'll win again. If they are just about assured a win, and the high reelection rate for incumbents, it points in that direction, then do you really think they're going to listen to what you have to say? Of course not. This is why I say your vote is never wasted. If that same winning politician and their consultants sit down and say, well, we pulled 50% of the vote, but our primary challenger pulled 41%, and the third parties pulled 9%. Don't think for a moment both sides don't take stock of that possible 9% that would help them win the next election. The bigger you can make the third-party voting bloc, whether it be the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, the Green Party, whatever, the bigger that bloc is, the more attention both major parties are going to pay to those people. Why do you think Washington, along with all these conservative show hosts, why do you think they're all tripping over themselves to either attack libertarian ideas in case of Washington or embrace them? It's because they see the polls. They see the rising unrest. They see the support for people like the Tea Party candidates. They see the debate moving in that direction. Who are the people trying to tell you these libertarian ideas are dangerous? It's the establishment of both parties, along with the media in Washington, D.C. They don't want the power moved out into the country, out to the citizens. All these people have worked hard to concentrate as much power and control in Washington as they can, and you can be sure they're going to fight to keep it there. All right, unfortunately, it's that time that we have to go to break and play some messages from our sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Obamacare, as well as some other things before the half-hour break. Join us in a couple of minutes here on The Patrick Riggins Show.